Now, we're starting off with a bit of a heavy topic this morning. We're looking at modern slavery and its effect in New Zealand. Now, not something we often think about as having an impact in this country, but human trafficking is today's form of slavery, and it's also the fastest growing criminal activity in the world. Now we have a bill before Parliament which seeks to strengthen our approach to human trafficking by amending the 1961 Crimes Act. Now, joining us on the show today to tell us more about this is the Salvation Army's Social Policy and Parliamentary Unit commentator, Paul Barber. He joins us on the show. Paul, thanks for being here.
Yeah, kia ora. Good morning. Good to be here.
So let's talk about this because there are so many things going on in New Zealand at the moment we could be talking about, but this is also a very heavy situation. What is the situation when it comes to human trafficking in New Zealand?
Yeah, I think this is something that's one of those examples of when you're trying to achieve social change in a country, that some things it's a long process, and it takes a persistence and a focus on getting change that may take years. And if we look at the history of the slavery abolition movement, we know it was a long struggle back in the 18th and 19th century. And unfortunately, the issue of slavery has not gone away. And what we're talking about today is one part of that struggle in what we call modern slavery and human trafficking. And at the moment, there's legislation before Parliament to make an amendment to the Crimes Act. And that's about trying to strengthen one part of the Crimes Act about the penalties people who are charged with trafficking, human trafficking or slavery offences in New Zealand receive, because the way the bill's currently framed, the penalties are lower than for other similar offences. And indeed, in some situations, other acts have been used, like the Prostitution Act, which carries lower penalties in it in order to get convictions. So this is I guess it's a bit of a complex story around slavery. I mean, if we think about modern slavery generally in the world, there's estimated to be about 50 million people who are victims of slavery and trafficking. Within New Zealand, there's an estimate that it's around 8,000 people who are affected. That could well be an undercount. Where it's because of the nature of this. It's people don't go around. You don't. It's hard to find out. And it's an important piece of work for us in the Salvation Army, because the Salvation Army is an international organisation and made an international commitment to the struggle against human trafficking and modern slavery. And the Salvation Army operates in about 140 countries around the world. And each sort of organisation territory has made a commitment to develop an action plan around combating modern slavery. So as an organisation, we're both dealing with responding to people in communities who may be victims of slavery and trafficking, and trying to be very practical and provide some support that is possible. At the end, I guess where I'm involved in the Social Policy and Parliamentary Unit is about trying to get that legislation strengthened so that we actually get better as a country in responding to it.
Because let's talk about that impact on individuals, on communities, when it comes to something like human trafficking in New Zealand. I think for many of us, we can think globally what that might look like, but it happens here in New Zealand. So what's the impact of that on our communities, on the people who are affected?
Well, you can see there's a kind of continuum from what might be described more as worker exploitation, where migrant workers particularly may be poorly treated. But there are also aspects that move into the area of trafficking, when people are deceived, held against their will, financially manipulated, taken and forced into the sex industry against their will. Moving children around without, which by definition, can be seen. It's one of the issues we're dealing with. And it happens, of course, in a way that is really hard to. It's not generally visible, and so a lot of it happens under the radar, and indeed the responses that you have to provide as organizations also need to be done in a way that doesn't put people further at risk. So this is the challenge we're diving into as a service organization, is trying to be to work well in that space. And there's many other NGOs in this country working, and it is important to see it as an international work, because the trafficking connects by definition internationally and across with the Pacific and Asia and worldwide, really, using our international networks to be coordinated in our responses. So it's people left trapped in dangerous and exploitative situations, people financially in debt bondage, for instance. Those are examples of how it plays out in our communities.
Yeah, and I think, something that surprised me is that it is literally in our backyard. I hadn't realised just in my local neighbourhood that there had been a case of slavery or trafficking with a local restaurant, and that surprised me. But perhaps we shouldn't be surprised that this does indeed exist here in New Zealand as well as in other places of the world.
Yeah, exactly. It's insidious, and it needs us to be aware and alert and supportive of changes that can help make things safer, and that is our goal. And I guess coming back to that sort of what we're up to today. Today we're talking to a select committee in Parliament about a bill that will make a small change to the Crimes Act that will make it easier to prosecute people, I guess, for this. We're also asking the select committee to recognise that for children that's under the age of 18, one of the funny things about defining trafficking is that people are deceived, or that's what trafficking is about. But one of the things is not requiring that test for children. This is some international protocol that New Zealand has actually signed 20 years ago and not actually put properly into our law. And so we'd like to see that change in the definition of trafficking to recognise that for children under 18 years, you don't have to prove they can somehow consented to it, because they can't consent as a child by definition, I guess is the point. We hope the select committees will look at this. This is part of, there's a sort of a kind of three prongs to this work as well. There's actually is a modern slavery bill that we've been advocating for a number of years around getting companies who are to report on their supply chains and where their products are coming from and what they're doing to ensure that the products they are selling in New Zealand are free from slavery, or that they are doing their best to investigate and manage the risks of slavery within their supply chains. This is something back in 2018 stood in front of Parliament talking to Christopher Luxon about a petition to have a bill like this that was organised by a whole series of NGOs. That petition had led to work to set up a national action plan to overcome human slavery and trafficking. So a lot of work is in train, and that had a plan that runs 2025 and actually is due to be renewed this year. So we have those three prongs: the action plan, some legislation to put it into supply chains, and as I say, this small change. And I want to acknowledge the work of the National MP Greg Fleming, who's sponsored this bill as a private member's bill. And it got drawn out of the ballot, as this is how it works in Parliament. Yeah. And this is an opportunity to make a change that can help better protect children and everyone who's at risk or victims of slavery.
Paul, this is really important work, and we can pray for the Salvation Army today that it all goes very well as you head towards making that submission. As the public, is there anything more that we can be doing as well? Is there ways that we can get involved, perhaps not with this one, but maybe with the Modern Slavery Act or something like that?
I think we really urge people to be keeping an eye out for this. There's more to be done, more campaigning to come from us and other organisations. Check out the with the organizations like Tier Fund and World Vision, who are among the drivers, and keep an eye out for more updates as we try and when you're talking to your MPs in your communities, just raise that issue and see this as something that is a very practical thing we can do tomorrow as a country. There's strong support across, Parliament. It needs to be resourced, though. That's the other thing. You don't can't reduce and enforce and investigate these things without resourcing. So encourage our political leaders that this is an area they should be prioritising.
Paul Barber, thank you so much, Paul, from the Salvation Army, and all the best with today. Thanks again.
Kia ora, thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Rhema. Now, if you found value in today's content, hit that like button. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to our channel with the subscribe button. This really helps us to continue to produce more quality content for you. And hey, if you'd like to stay updated and never miss any of our future videos, ring that notification bell as well. Don't forget to follow us on our other socials, which are in the description below. And until then, stay tuned.